At 7:30 in the morning on June 6, 1944, Brigadier General Norman Cotter stepped off a landing craft into waist-deep water 400 yards from Omaha Beach in Normandy, France, watching soldiers crouched behind a seawall who had stopped moving forward. The soldiers belonged to the 116th Infantry Regiment, 1st Infantry Division, and the 116th Regiment, 29th Infantry Division. German machine gun fire swept across the beach from concrete bunkers on the bluffs 200 feet above them. Artillery shells exploded in the surf. Bodies floated in the water. Disabled tanks burned on the sand. The entire invasion was collapsing right in front of Cotter's eyes. He was 51 years old, Assistant Division Commander of the 29th Infantry Division, one of the most senior officers to land in the first waves. The Germans had approximately 12,000 soldiers from the 352nd Infantry Division, with nearly 7,000 Infantry Division combat troops defending this 5-mile stretch of beach. They occupied fortified positions on the high ground with interlocking fields of fire covering every approach. American doctrine said the pre-invasion naval and air bombardment would destroy these defenses. The plan called for 40 minutes of naval gunfire and 30 minutes of heavy bomber strikes to neutralize the German positions before the 1st Infantry touched shore at 6:30 in the morning as the bombardment ended. The American planners believed in firepower. They believed that enough shells and bombs could destroy any defensive position. The numbers supported this belief. Thousands of tons of explosives were going to hit a 5-mile stretch of beach. Nothing could survive that. The Germans would be dead or too stunned to fight effectively. The infantry would walk ashore against minimal resistance. The Germans had a different plan. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel had taken command of coastal defences in late 1943. He'd seen what Allied firepower could do in North Africa. He knew the Allies would bombard the beaches before landing. He designed his defences to survive that bombardment. Rommel ordered the construction of massive concrete bunkers with walls 6 feet thick. He positioned them to provide interlocking fields of fire. He built obstacles on the beach, steel barriers and wooden posts topped with mines that would rip open landing craft. He laid thousands of mines in the sand and behind the seawall. He told his officers that the invasion had to be stopped at the waterline. The first 24 hours would decide the war. If the Allies got off the beaches and established a beachhead, German forces would never dislodge them. The Allies had too much material, too many men, too much air power. Once they got ashore in strength, they'd win. So the beach was everything. The beach was where Germany would win or lose. Every defensive position was designed with that in mind. Kill them on the beach. Stop them in the water. Don't let them get inland. But the bombardment had failed. The Navy fired from too far offshore, between 5,000 and 6,000 yards out to avoid German coastal artillery. Most shells overshot their targets and exploded inland. 2 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 13 destroyers had pounded the beach for 40 minutes. They fired thousands of rounds. The noise was deafening. The flashes lit up the pre-dawn darkness. From offshore, it looked like the entire coast was being obliterated. But the Germans in their concrete bunkers barely felt it. The shells were landing behind them, in the fields and villages inland. The fortifications on the bluffs remained untouched. The air bombardment was equally ineffective. The bombers, flying through heavy cloud cover at high altitude, released their bombs late to avoid hitting the approaching landing craft. 448 B-24 Liberators from the 8th Air Force dropped 13,000 bombs in a 30-minute window. Nearly all landed 1 to 3 miles inland. They killed cows. They cratered empty fields. They destroyed abandoned buildings. They didn't touch a single German bunker on the beach. The bombardiers couldn't see their targets through the clouds. They relied on instruments and timing, but the timing was off. Every bomb aimer added a few extra seconds before release, just to be safe, just to make sure they didn't hit American troops. Those few seconds meant the bombs fell inland. The safety margin that was supposed to protect the infantry doomed them instead. When the first wave of infantry hit Omaha at 6:30, they ran straight into intact German defenses. Company A of the 116th Regiment landed directly in front of a fortified strongpoint at Dog Green sector. The ramp dropped. German machine guns opened fire immediately. 32 men were killed before they left their landing craft. They died in the boat or in the boat, the water trying to get out. The ones who made it to the water were loaded down with 60 pounds of equipment. Some drowned in water over their heads. Others were hit by machine gun fire as they struggled toward shore. The company had landed in the worst possible location. A German strongpoint, designated WN-71, sat on the bluff directly overlooking their landing site. The bunker housed 3 machine guns and had perfect fields of fire covering the entire sector. The Germans couldn't miss. They just aimed at the waterline and pulled the triggers. Company A suffered 65% casualties in the first 10 minutes. Within 30 minutes, 96% of the company was dead, wounded, or combat ineffective. Out of over 200 men, fewer than 20 made it across the beach uninjured and combat ready. The company had effectively ceased to exist as a fighting unit before most of them even reached the sand. Soldiers who made it to the beach found themselves pinned down behind a low seawall with barbed wire blocking their path forward. Without Bangalore torpedoes or wire cutters, they couldn't advance. Without leadership, they wouldn't move. The plan was dying. Soldiers were dying. And Norman Cotter was watching it happen from 200 yards offshore. The problem wasn't that American soldiers didn't know what to do. They knew. Every briefing emphasized it. Get off the beach, move inland, find cover, attack the strong points. The training had been exhaustive. The 1st Infantry Division had fought in North Africa and Sicily. They were veterans. The 29th Division had trained in England for 2 years. They knew their jobs, but knowing what to do and being able to do it are different things. On Omaha Beach that morning, everything that could go wrong did. Landing craft hit sandbars 600 yards from shore and dropped their ramps in deep water. Men carrying 60 pounds of equipment drowned before reaching the beach. Amphibious tanks, designed to swim ashore ahead of the infantry, sank in the rough seas. 27 of 32 DD tanks from the 741st Tank Battalion went straight to the bottom. The infantry arrived without armour support. The Navy coxswains, disoriented by smoke and afraid of German artillery, landed units in the wrong sectors. Entire companies became separated from their officers. Radio equipment got soaked and stopped working. Engineers carrying Bangalore torpedoes were killed before they could clear the wire obstacles. The German fire was murderous. Machine guns fired from concrete casemates that the naval bombardment hadn't scratched. Mortars dropped shells directly onto the landing craft as their ramps went down. Artillery batteries on the high ground had pre-registered coordinates for every square metre of beach. They fired for effect without needing to adjust. The beach became a killing zone. Bodies piled up along the waterline. Wounded men drowned as the tide came in. Equipment littered the sand. Burning vehicles blocked the exits. The noise was overwhelming. Explosions, gunfire, men screaming, the smell of cordite, burning fuel, and death. Every sense told the soldiers the same thing. They were going to die here. So they stopped. They found whatever cover they could. They pressed themselves into the sand behind the seawall and the shingle, and they stayed there because moving meant death. The official plan didn't account for this. The plan assumed the bombardment would work. The plan assumed the tanks would land on time. The plan assumed the engineers would clear the obstacles. The plan assumed leadership would remain intact. The plan assumed soldiers would follow doctrine even when everything fell apart. The plan was a fantasy. By 7 in the morning, 1,600 American soldiers were pinned down on Omaha Beach. None had advanced more than 200 yards inland. The beachhead was 400 yards deep at its deepest point. It should have been 2 miles deep by now. Division headquarters offshore couldn't get accurate reports. Radio communications were failing. Officers were dead or separated from their units. Nobody knew what was happening. Some commanders considered calling off the entire landing. The situation looked hopeless. That's when Norman Cotter arrived. Within the first hour of the landing, Kota witnessed the systematic destruction of American units all around him. Bodies floated in the surf. Wounded men called for medics who couldn't reach them. Equipment was scattered everywhere. Rifles, helmets, packs, ammunition boxes, all abandoned as men fought just to get to cover. An unnamed lieutenant he didn't know was trying to organize a squad behind the seawall when a mortar round landed directly on his position. 4 men died instantly. 3 others were wounded badly enough that they'd die within the hour if they didn't get medical attention. Medical attention wasn't coming. The aid stations were overwhelmed. Medics were being shot wearing their Red Cross armbands. The Germans either didn't care about the Geneva Convention or figured the Red Crosses made good targets. Major Charles Tegtmeier, the regimental surgeon for the 16th Infantry, wrote in his after-action report that the Geneva Convention was a failure. The white brassards drew fire. Company aidmen were being shot intentionally. He watched medics get hit while treating wounded men. The Germans seemed to target them specifically. The beach was divided into sectors with code names: Dog Green, Dog White, Dog Red, Easy Green, Easy Red, Fox Green, Fox Red. Each sector had specific units assigned to land there, but the plan had broken down immediately. Landing craft commanders, blinded by smoke and disoriented by the chaos, put men ashore wherever they could. Units were scattered across the wrong sectors. Officers couldn't find their companies. Companies couldn't find their platoons. The chain of command had disintegrated in the first 10 minutes. Engineers from the 299 Engineer Combat Battalion were trying to emplace a Bangalore torpedo under a section of barbed wire near the Veerville Draw. The Bangalore was 50 feet long, packed with 85 pounds of TNT, assembled by hand under fire. The engineers got the torpedo in position and were connecting the detonator when German machine gun fire killed 2 of them instantly. The 3rd engineer tried to complete the detonation. He was hit before he could set the charge. The Bangalore lay there, useless, while men behind the wire stayed pinned down. Kota watched this happen from 40 yards away. He saw the problem immediately. Without Bangalore torpedoes, there was no way through the wire. Without a way through the wire, there was no way off the beach. Without getting off the beach, everyone was going to die. The doctrine said engineers would clear the obstacles, but the engineers were dead. Doctrine didn't have a backup plan for this. By 7:15, Kota had seen enough. He'd watched too many men die. He'd watched too many soldiers freeze behind inadequate cover. He'd watched the entire invasion stall because nobody was moving, so he started walking. He walked upright across the beach toward the seawall. German fire was everywhere. Bullets snapped past him. Mortar shells landed close enough to throw sand on him. He didn't duck. He didn't run. He walked. When he reached the seawall, he found soldiers from the 116th Infantry Regiment and the 5th Ranger Battalion huddled behind it, soaked, exhausted, terrified. Some had their rifles fouled with sand and water. Others had lost their weapons entirely. They looked at Kota with blank expressions: shell shock, combat fatigue. Whatever you wanted to call it, these men had stopped functioning as soldiers. Kota knelt beside them and spoke clearly. He told them they were being killed on the beaches. He told them they needed to go inland. He told them that staying here meant death just as surely as moving forward did. But at least moving forward gave them a chance. Then he stood up and kept walking. What happened in the next 4 hours would determine whether the Normandy invasion succeeded or failed. The plan had been clear. Get infantry off the beach in the first 30 minutes. Secure the beach exits in the first hour. Move 2 miles inland by noon. Link up with British forces at Gold Beach to the east and American forces at Utah Beach to the west. By nightfall on June 6th, the 1st Infantry Division was supposed to control Colleville-sur-Mer and be pushing toward Bayeux. But plans die when they meet reality. The reality at Omaha Beach was that American forces were stuck. The beach exits, narrow draws through the bluffs, were covered by German strongpoints. Machine guns and mortars had pre-registered fire on every approach. Even if soldiers got through the wire, they'd be slaughtered trying to climb the draws. The WW2 Germans knew this. They'd spent years fortifying these positions. They'd cleared fields of fire. They'd emplaced obstacles. They'd registered artillery coordinates. Every inch of beach was covered by overlapping fire. The defenses weren't designed to repel every attacker. They were designed to slow the Americans down long enough for German reinforcements to arrive and push them back into the sea. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel had inspected these defenses personally. He'd told his officers that the invasion must be stopped at the waterline. Once the Allies established a beachhead and got their armour ashore, German forces wouldn't be able to dislodge them. The beach was the killing zone. The beach was where the war would be decided. Rommel understood this perfectly. So did Kota. The difference was that Kota was standing on the beach with the soldiers who were dying. He wasn't reading reports miles away. He was there, in the middle of it, and he could see exactly what needed to happen. Somebody had to move forward. Somebody had to find a way through the wire. Somebody had to attack those strong points, and that somebody had to be him. At approximately 7:45, Kota found a group of Rangers from the 5th Ranger Battalion pinned down near a section of damaged wire. The wire wasn't completely intact. Naval gunfire had torn a gap in it, maybe 3 feet wide. The gap was under direct fire from a German machine gun position 70 yards up the bluff. Any soldier trying to go through would be cut down immediately. The Rangers knew this. They'd tried twice already. Both times, the first man through was killed instantly. Now they were stuck, waiting for someone else to figure out what to do. Kota walked up to them and asked what unit they belonged to. Someone answered, 5th Rangers. Kota looked at the gap in the wire, looked at the machine gun position, looked back at the Rangers, and said something that became the motto of every Ranger unit that followed. Well, God damn it, Rangers, lead the way. Then he walked through the gap himself. The machine gun didn't fire. Maybe the German gunner was reloading. Maybe he was distracted by fire from a destroyer offshore. Maybe he just didn't see Kota in time. It didn't matter. Kota made it through, turned around, and waved the Rangers forward. They followed him. 12 men made it through the gap before the machine gun opened up again. 2 were hit. The rest scattered and found cover in the tall grass on the slope leading up the bluff. Kota kept moving. He crawled up the slope with the Rangers spread out behind him. When they reached a position where they could see the machine gun bunker, Kota directed suppressing fire, while 2 Rangers worked their way around to the flank. They got close enough to throw grenades through the bunker's firing slit. The machine guns stopped. That was the first German strongpoint cleared on Omaha Beach. The time was 8:04 in the morning, 1 hour. And 34 minutes after the first wave landed, Kota's action did something the naval bombardment and the airstrikes hadn't done. It showed the soldiers on the beach that the German defences could be beaten. If Kota could walk through the wire and knock out a machine gun bunker, then so could they. Word spread along the beach. A general had broken through near Vierville. Men started moving. Not in organised units, not according to the plan, but in small groups. A squad here, a fire team there. Soldiers who'd been frozen by fear 10 minutes earlier suddenly found themselves following sergeants and lieutenants who decided it was time to stop dying on the beach and start killing Germans inland. By 8:30, Bangalore torpedoes were being emplaced successfully. Engineers who'd survived the initial landings started clearing wire obstacles. They worked under covering fire from riflemen who'd organised themselves into ad hoc fire teams. The engineers would slide a